explain the developments today and talk about what it's like to be there in Jerusalem, where it's happening, what you can hear, what you can see, and what's going on?
Well, actually, as we speak, the emergency government is being sworn in. This is a government that has come together in the face of this national crisis. And I'll remind your viewers that over the course of this year, Israel has been deeply divided over plans by the far-right coalition to implement a judicial overhaul, which would see the Supreme Court stripped of much of its powers. That's deeply divided the nation. It's brought mass protests. But today seems to be a turning point because those opposition parties, not all of them, but some of them have come together with the coalition, and they're forming an emergency government in order to deal with the national crisis.
And in terms of lockdown and shutdown and what's going on in the country, and particularly where you are, what are you experiencing? What can you do? What can't you do? What can you hear overhead? What are the feelings?
I have to tell you, I've been covering several rounds of escalation in this region for several years. And one thing that I always found remarkable is that Israelis have found a way to kind of keep routine, even in times of turmoil, even when there were escalations and sometimes even full-scale operations that brought rockets across the country. What was shocking to me this time was when I left my apartment in Jerusalem in those initial days, it was absolutely quiet on the streets. Restaurants were closed. Very few shops were open. And what I saw was a city in shock. And I think that really represents the sentiment of what's going through the country at this moment.
Yesterday, as I was broadcasting at exactly this time, 5 o'clock in the evening in the United Kingdom, we were hearing from our correspondents in Israel about another war front opening, a war front opening in the north. And I wonder what the developments have been since then in the last 24 hours.
So there have been minor developments. We're watching that develop as they unfold. Even just now, about an hour or two ago, there were sirens that rang out in northern Israel. The military checked them. Some of them were false alarms. I think that just speaks to the tension that's also on that border. Israel has said that it is readying and preparing for another confrontation on that border. We haven't seen that escalation full scale enter into this picture yet, into this war, but it certainly is being made clear by Israel. And even if you saw by the United States, that they are readying for that, they are prepared for that, and they're prepared to respond if there does seem to be any kind of incursions or entry by Hezbollah and perhaps even other militant groups from the northern frontier.
So, as I introduced the subject of Israel on the programme this evening, you heard me say the number of deaths in Israel and so many more casualties, the number of deaths in Gaza and so many more casualties. And we all know that there are more and more to come. It's inevitable. So I would ask you, would you say that Hamas, the terror attack on Saturday, the massacre, the biggest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, Hamas knew when it was doing it that this was going to result in many, many Palestinians losing their lives? Thousands, maybe who knows how many, tens of thousands, heaven forbid. But the Hamas knew it, knew that that would be the consequence. So in that case, people are struggling in this country, I think, to understand, why did they do it? What were they trying to do? What were they trying to achieve by this massacre?
I just want to make a point on that one issue. We here at Reuters have been speaking to survivors. We've been collecting testimony. I myself have been speaking to survivors and first responders basically nonstop since we were able to have access to those. I know that there's a lot of misinformation online about those stories, and I would at this point encourage your viewers to go to Reuters for credible information about what happened on the ground, trustworthy reporting from our staff of veteran reporters who have covered conflicts in the past. To your point, and I've been covering these escalations for many years now, they do tend to fall into a pattern where there are exchanges on both sides. I myself don't have any credible information about exactly what Hamas's intentions were, but if you look at past indications, We are seeing some of those patterns repeat themselves. We are seeing Israel try to retaliate in the ways that it has retaliated in the past. And what we need to now look forward, I think, when we're watching this conflict, is what will be the next steps, and if they will change tactics, if they will try other military options. And we are speaking with military experts, reporters. We're watching those situations on the ground as they develop, and we will certainly be reporting on those events as they develop and bringing credible and trustworthy information as much as we possibly can.